Good evening, everybody. This is Keith with the daily, sometimes semi-daily, sometimes semi-weekly Outrage. And welcome to Monday night. So I'm doing this strictly on the podcast now. First of all, because I have a face for radio, and I don't think you want to see me. I don't think you really want to see the mess behind me in the bomb shelter. So we're just going to do it this way from now on. And I did tell Katie, we'll make sure that we clearly delineate what I'm doing as to opposed to what we do together. And it's tough. I want to tell you, just share a little bit about myself. Being on the spectrum and having had a real shitty experience with a former federal agency I work for, the VA here in Pittsburgh, with some of the absolute worst people you could ever hope to work for, not the veterans, employees. I can't say, and I try to be generous. I try to be good-hearted. But I honestly cannot say that I feel too sorry for what they're going through right now. Could happen to a nicer bunch of people. But things that happened at that job, added to my condition the way it already was, have made me hypervigilant. I think I'm going to be hypervigilant until the day I die. Now, I work for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I work at a great office with great people. Just really enjoying it, but still hypervigilant. You know, somebody's going to just hop over the room divider and say, "Hey," and I'll jump out of my freaking seat 2 feet. So when I get home, I'm pretty beat. But tonight, I just knew I had to do this because this is serious. And we have just a few things here that I really want to go over in some depth. There is so much news tonight. If I were to do a news roundup, be here all night. Literally would be here all night. All right, let's go ahead and play the news sounder. All right. Random scattered headlines. Oh, those of you who are old enough probably remember that is the old Mutual Radio sounder. Trump raises aluminum and steel tariffs 25%. Trump fires head of government ethics office. Elon Musk-led investor group offers $97 billion to buy OpenAI. Federal judge maintains holds on Trump employees' resignation plan. J.D. Vance suggests Trump administration may not comply with court orders. We'll get to that. It's just one damn thing after another, folks. But tonight I want to concentrate on two things, and two things only, because I think they're the most important things that are going on right now. First of all, I don't read the Washington Post anymore. I stopped subscribing to it. Actually, I got a free... Here's something you probably don't know. Federal employees actually had a free subscription to the Washington Post up until very recently. Just basically a few months ago, the Post decided to end it. But federal employees with a federal email account could get the Washington Post for free. Honestly, for free. No restrictions. Why they did that, I have no idea. It was a nice little perk to have as a federal employee, and it lasted for a while after I left the federal government, but now, no. And I think we all know the reasons why a lot of us are boycotting the Post. But there was an article buried, and I mean buried, in the Post on Sunday that it was covered in depth, first after the Post, by Keith Olberman, who you are going to be hearing tonight. And if you're not, listening to Keith Olberman's podcast, you really need to be doing that. You really need to be listening to Keith Olberman. Okay? And I notice that because I'm just a shameless fanboy, and I always have been. But he knows what time it is, folks. So I'm going to be playing a little bit of him, about 5 minutes of Keith Olberman's latest podcast for you in just a little bit. But what is happening here within the federal government is there are hiring a new well, first of all, they got rid of a bunch of FBI agents. And they said to some of them, you could have your job back. We just want to give you a little quiz. We have a few questions for you. Okay, some of them are yes or no. And if you pass this test, you could be an FBI agent again. So these agents were asked, and this again was in the Post on Sunday, like the 33rd story from the top of the mast. One of the questions they asked is, who is your real boss? To which any federal employee would basically say, the people of the United States and the Constitution. Wrong answer. They wanted him to say Donald Trump is your real boss. This was a yes or no question. Was the election of 2020 stolen, yes or no? The correct answer is yes. Even though it's bullshit. Was the January 6th incident an inside job? Correct answer, yes. And he's asking the FBI agents to basically say, yes, there were FBI people in the crowd as agent provocateurs instigating the riot and the insurrection of January 6th. The last question that the Post knows of, who were the real patriots on January 6th? You feel as sick as I do when reading this? The agents who took this failed because they answered honestly in the way they were supposed to answer. They answered like Americans should answer. I can't say Americans anymore because there's a large group of us who are no longer behaving like Americans of old. The ugly America that I used to know that I see fading away right now, which is why I'm on the air tonight. But what this was, is a loyalty test, which is expressly prohibited in the federal code. You shall not take a loyalty test to be a federal employee. But of course, what this is doing is it's closing off the FBI to anybody except pro-Trump goons who will do what they're told to do by Trump. And it'll be part of his personal enforcement agency. Now, if that doesn't chill your blood, I don't know what does. I really don't. Then we're talking about the defiance of court orders. A lot of people on the left, a lot of liberals, have been talking a good game recently about, well, look, we're winning in the courts. We're winning in the courts. We've got injunction this and that. We're hamstringing the president. We're hamstringing Elon Musk. The problem is there's evidence that they are not feel themselves bound by these court orders. And the impoundment of funds, which was ordered to be unfrozen, continues. J.D. Vance, the vice president, has been accused of threatening the Constitution. This is from The Guardian. After telling judges who have issued rulings temporarily blocking some of Donald Trump's most contentious executive orders that they aren't allowed to control the president's legitimate power. Now, U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer issued an injunction stopping Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency from accessing the Treasury Department's central payment system in search of supposed corruption and waste. This drove Vance up a wall sideways, and he said the following, quote, "If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal," he wrote. No, it wouldn't. That's what JAG is for, the Judge Advocates Generals. Heck, even Stonekettle, Jim Wright on Threads and on Blue Sky has some firsthand experience with JAG advising commanders what they can and cannot do. So that's bullshit. If a judge, I'm continuing here on the quote, if a judge tried to command the Attorney General on how to use her discretionary roles as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. No, it's not. He said judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power, end quote, which is absolute bullshit. In fact, Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution confers a power known as judicial review, which gives federal judges the authority to rule on cases involving the president as well as other branches of government. Vance's comments drew widespread criticism. Vance, who went to Yale Law School, knows better. He knows better, and that's the point with these guys. Vance is not, he may come across as dim, but he's a Yale-educated attorney, and he knows better than what he just said. He's playing for MAGA. He's playing for Trump. And he's also doing another very critical thing. He's moving that over to the window a little bit more to the right. He's just putting it out there as a conversation topic that we're all talking about. That federal judges, yea, even Supreme Court judges, can't tell the president how to run the executive branch of government. We're talking about that. That's step one to legitimizing such a thing. That's what the real aim here is. He knows he's going to stir up a hornet's nest. He knows that. He wants that. Because we're talking about it. We can't not talk about it. Because it's a direct threat to our 250-year-old constitutional republic. And that is what has me animated tonight. And it should have you animated tonight. If the President of the United States, Donald Trump, decides he's not going to pay any attention to rulings by federal judges, then we have lost the country. We are perilously close to losing the country. Folks, I don't know what to tell you. What I want to do now is play about 5 minutes of Keith Olberman's latest podcast. Because there are people responsible for this. People who both sides us and told us that we were hysterical. And we were going too far with these scenarios, these criticisms, these warnings. We've gone off the deep end. And we're just stirring the pot, getting people all riled up for nothing. None of this is going to happen. Of course not. The institutions will hold. The Democratic Party will hold. The voters, in their infinite wisdom, will not re-elect Donald Trump. But there are other people to blame for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play about 5 minutes of Keith Olberman's podcast in which he lays out exactly the people to blame for this. And here we go.
And so I would like to mention here, while it is still legal to mention here, that we are here now on the precipice as it crumbles beneath us. In large measure, probably in the decisive final measure, because of the people who both sidesed us and whatabouted us, who both sidesed and whatabouted this country, figuratively and probably literally, to death. Attorney General Merrick Garland and former President Joe Biden, who refused to recognize that the danger was not in breaking the ritualistic imbecilities of Department of Justice norms or not getting back to normality as soon as possible. The danger was in not vigorously and immediately prosecuting Trump and taking any measures available to imprison him for the rest of his life and imprison these creatures who now ask the successors to Garland's own employees, who's your real boss? Garland and Biden helped kill our country. David Zaslav, head of Warner Brothers Discovery, and his minion Chris Licht, who neutered CNN to make money. Not decisive by any stretch of the imagination, but neutering CNN accelerated the both sides' landslide. David Zaslav and Chris Licht helped kill our country. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash of CNN, who refused to demand the right to fact-check Trump in the debate last summer as he lied literally without interruption for 90 minutes. Tapper and Bash, who helped kill our country. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, who 2 weeks after the election went to Florida to prostrate and prostitute themselves in front of Trump. Scarborough and Brzezinski helped kill our country. Mark Zuckerberg, the spineless head of Facebook and a series of failed related websites, who with terror written across his face has guaranteed Trump that he and his liars could lie all they wanted to on all of his platforms. Mark Zuckerberg, who helped kill our country. Joe Kahn, executive editor, and A.G. Sulzberger, publisher of the New York Times, who made sure every cowardly, non-committal headline slapped above the work of their writers, the courageous work and the cringing work alike, would never convey malice, who would never specify danger, which would never warn readers, headlines, and two men, Kahn and Sulzberger, who helped kill our country. Mitt Romney, former U.S. Senator and Governor, who 9 years ago attacked Trump, then appeased him in hopes of becoming Secretary of State, who 5 years ago attacked me in print because I called Trump a terrorist in the months before the 2020 election, who 4 months after he called me a terrorist found himself pinned inside the Capitol by Trump's terrorists, and who still would never call Trump what he is. Mitt Romney, who helped kill our country. Countless nominal Democrats who since the election or since the inauguration or both have sought to find compromise or move towards bipartisanship with Trump and an evil machine that wants you to say only one thing. Not bipartisan this, compromise that. They want just one thing from you. You are my real boss. Chuck Schumer, who used the phrase "stop the steal" last week. I guess he thought it was funny. John Fetterman, Eric Adams, Mark Kelly, Akeem Jeffries, Chris Coons, nearly all of them in that party to some degree, great or small, briefly or still in progress. Someone looking to get to a yes on Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel. All of them who helped kill our country. And dozens upon dozens of commentators and reporters and newscasters and columnists who I'm sure all wanted to say more, but they had mortgages to pay and careers to consider in a shrinking medium and guest bookings they could not jeopardize. Bob Iger, Van Jones, Andrea Mitchell, Katie Tur, the other executives of ABC News, the executives of 60 Minutes, the new head of MSNBC's parent, Mark Lazarus, looking to make MSNBC more accessible to Republicans. Everybody virtually at Politico, Chris Cillizza, Chuck Todd, Kristen Welker.
And this is Keith, by himself tonight in the bomb shelter, because I just had to. All right, back here. This is Keith by himself. Keith alone in the bomb shelter tonight. Bringing you, I guess, what I would call an emergency outrage podcast. And I really like that last part that we just played with Keith Olberman about the journalists. You know, they would love to have said more. They really would have loved to have told you what was on their minds, what was the real story, the real warnings. But, the kid needs braces, and I want the kids to go to a good college, and what would it do for my career, my bookings, and all that. They're no better than the senators and congressmen right now who will sell their country out, and they're doing it on both sides of the aisle, I might add. The Republicans in total, but many Democrats as well. And I explain this way, that the rarefied air of Washington, once you become a senator like Fetterman, once you get your seat in the House, especially in the House, you're fundraising continuously 365 days a year, because you campaign every 2 years you're elected. But you get kind of a tunnel vision when re-election becomes, and keeping yourself in that seat becomes the be-all and end-all of your life. And the longer you serve in the House or Senate, the more powerful that compulsion gets, until it becomes your entire persona, Chuck Schumer, who would rather be dead, I would say, than to lose his position as minority leader. Because their personas are so wrapped up in it. It is their identity. It is their personhood. To lose that would be a death, an ego death that they simply could not bear. And they're willing to trade their country for it. Those Republicans who are fearing being primaried, they're willing to trade their country to keep their nice, cushy seat. Of course they are. This is what we teach kids. This is what we do in this country. It's time to climb to the top of the greasy pole and then fight off all anybody who would take you out. Because getting and maintaining power, and let's say this, and maybe say this a little bit. This is something that I've harped on for a long time. What most Americans don't understand about what goes on, and what most Democrats have never understood, is that this is a power game. And those who know how to wield power are the ones that rule. It's the same for any government in any part of history. The Republican Party, for all their faults, for all their being fascists, know how to get and maintain and wield power. And they are unashamed to do it, unlike the Democrats, who even when they have power, seem to think it's icky to actually use it. We're the nice guys. We don't do that sort of thing. We don't do what Republicans do. We don't shut down the Senate. We don't engage in brinksmanship. We don't do any of that. And you lose. And that's how you lose. You might remember in the movie Patton, the actor George C. Scott opens the movie with a soliloquy where he's addressing his troops. And he says something that actually is very, very true about us as Americans. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans will not tolerate a party that has the aura of being losers. that it's a party of equivocation, of compromise. Because the way things are right now, it's all about the raw exercise of power. And folks, you are getting a master class in it right now. So what happens? What happens? And everybody's asking that. I everywhere I turn, MSNBC, Liberal Talk Radio, Stephanie Miller, Michelangelo Signorelli, Tom Hartman, everybody's asking the same question tonight as you and I are sitting here amicably chatting as the nation teeters on the brink. What happens when Trump tells a federal judge, I'm not going to listen to, we're going to continue to do what you're going to do. You've made your ruling, now enforce it. So a lot of people wonder, how does the court enforce its orders? Well, generally, they don't have to. Because we lived in a country where the rule of law was respected once. We lived in a country where it would seem, other than Andrew Jackson back in the 1830s, it would seem incredible to defy a court order that any politician or office holder would do so. Not so much anymore. But orders are enforced, federal court orders are enforced, generally and nominally, by the U.S. Marshal Service. It was pointed out, of course, that the U.S. Marshal Service is part of the Department of Justice, run now by lackey Pam Bondi, who would not send the marshals to arrest Donald Trump. So people wonder what's going to happen. With the Supreme Court of the United States, same problem. They can make a ruling, how can they enforce it? Against a president that simply will not recognize their authority upon him. Well, I like playing what if. I do this a lot when I'm on Threads. So let's play what if tonight. What if this actually happens? If the Supreme Court makes a ruling that for some reason goes 5-4 against Trump on issues of presidential power, that is to say, that he cannot impound funds that have been allocated by Congress. Just to take one issue of many that could come up before the court. So what happens then? And Trump basically blows a raspberry at him and says, we're going to continue doing what we're going to do. And like Andrew Jackson once said many, many years ago, you have made your order, now enforce it. I would put it this way. If I were on, let's just say it's a 5-4 decision, 3 liberals, let's throw in Kavanaugh because he's written about this extensively and have taken the position that the government cannot defy a court order and that executive power is limited. And the Chief Justice, guy who wants the court to be respected. Let's say it's 5-4. One of those people, probably Roberts, gets on the phone and calls the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and says, desperate times call for desperate measures. This is the constitutional crisis we've been worried about. We're already in it right now. It's a slow-moving one, but we're in it. At what point do the people who have sworn an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, at what point does some of them decide that Donald Trump defying a Supreme Court order or even district court orders makes him a domestic enemy to the Constitution of the United States. Folks, this is what we teach our children. You were taught this. I was taught this. Generations, millions of American children were taught this in civics. Well, the ones that still teach civics. Now it's, social studies. And yet we taught the separation of powers, the three co-equal branches of government. The way that this was almost a unique, well, it is a unique system in the world that has worked so well for so many years. It has its faults, yes. And I'm the first one to criticize them. But I sit here in this bomb shelter tonight and I wonder, like a surgeon, on the table looking at the body of democracy. And that person, that body, that ideal that the Founding Fathers gave us is dying. You're the doctor, you've done everything you can to save it. When do you call it? When do you call its death? At what point does it die? Is it already dead, or will it die when we have the final confrontation between the federal courts and the executive office of the President of the United States? Well, I've gone over half an hour. I'm going to stop now. But this Monday, there is supposed to be, across the country, more demonstrations. I don't know what's happening here in Pittsburgh. We've had people trying to find out. I might just hop in the car shortly before noon, go downtown and see what's going on. But in state capitals and larger cities, you may have a demonstration. See if you can find out. If you were ever thinking that one day you needed to be somewhere, you needed to put yourself on the line, because that's what it's going to take. That you needed to hold the sign and march around and be as mad as hell. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the time. It is the time to make your voice heard. I know many of you have been calling your congressman. That's wonderful. But if you can, if you physically can, if you psychologically can, this Monday, find your demonstration. Go there, stand shoulder to shoulder with your fellow Americans, and tell this administration that the Constitution of the United States is an ideal worth saving. And you object to what is going on here. I don't care if your MAGA relatives think you're crazy. They're lost. They're gone. They still think they're good Americans. But there are some things worth fighting for. And this is one of them. Because it's the future of your children. Your loved ones. I mean, we're all going to feel the pain soon enough. Trump just announced his 25% tariffs that are going to hit Canada and Mexico. I told people he was just toying with them, and they thought I was crazy. He backed down. He backed down. No, he didn't back down. He likes to play this cat playing with the mouse before he kills it. 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Folks, the Chinese are also responding to our tariffs. The pain is coming. The pain is coming. This is the time. And your courthouse or city hall or whatever, federal building, is the place. I encourage you. I implore you. I beseech you. I beg you. Now is the time. All right, everybody. May do this again in another day of this week. We'll see how things go. Say a prayer for your republic tonight if you're a praying person. This is Keith. And by the way, if you haven't listened to our podcast that drops Sunday, if you've got kids and they're picking up on this and they don't know how to handle it and they're worried and they're angry and they're upset, we've got practical advice on From the Bomb Shelter with Katie and Keith on how to help your children deal with all this and how to help you deal with all of it. How to keep an even keel when those about you are losing their heads. How to deal with all this madness, this fire hose of bad news. We have Dr. Alonda Rogers on the podcast. It dropped Sunday afternoon From the Bomb Shelter with Katie and Keith. Give it a listen. I'll be back, and we'll be back, of course, Katie and I, next weekend as well. Take care.